just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
We've got a fresh college football playoff ranking that just dropped. Let's talk about it. Now, there's not a lot that I have any disagreements with. This is not like in the past where I was screaming about the ordering of USC and LSU. And we're going to get to that at the end here. It's not going to be a long video, but we're going to get to that at the end. The placement of Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, TCU at 3, and USC at 4, I think is very fitting. It is something that I've projected and talked about multiple times on how I think it's going to end up playing out. Once Ohio State or Michigan lost, those two teams deserved to slide in where they would. They make sense. Assuming that everyone there wins their conference championship game, that likely is going to be the Final Four, and there should be no issues remaining. And I think most people, most college football fans would agree that there's not going to be much of a shakeup because most of the college championship games, conference championship games, are pretty favorable for these top 4 ranked teams, except for the TCU one. And I would argue that TCU, even if they lose to Kansas State, a one-loss team, very likely could still end up in the playoff. Where I come into issue is not with Ohio State at 5. It's confusing. There's not a lot of great teams this year after 4, especially ones with considerable resumes that we can make a strong argument for. So to put them at 5, it makes sense. You got blown out, but it's your one loss of the season, and it was to a team that's going to win the Big Ten championship game. If they dominate Purdue, it looks even better. I hope they don't end up in the playoff for the sake that I don't have a lot of faith in them to show up and compete. Where I do come into question here is I do not love, and this is something that the argument I kept seeing the entire week, was why are we going to place Alabama ahead of Tennessee, a team that lost to Tennessee? If you have comparable records and comparable resumes, and one team has more top 25 wins, why are you ahead of them? It seems like a bit of a recency bias, a bit of an overreaction to the South Carolina loss that they suffered a few weeks ago. What I will say, though, with this, on paper, it's aggravating. And on paper, I think most people would understand that it doesn't make sense to place Alabama ahead of Tennessee. However, if there is some insane nonsense that happens this weekend, just hypothetically, Michigan, TCU, and USC all lose, and there is a shakeup and one team drops out, maybe 2 teams drops out, I would rather actually have Alabama in over Tennessee for obvious reasons. There shouldn't be much of a debate here. Tennessee doesn't have Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton's fine, but I don't have a lot of faith in Joe Milton to compete in the college football playoff and to put together a strong performance to put them in a competitive position in a game. This is pure speculation. This is pure off of a situation that probably isn't going to happen. But at the end of the day, I'd rather watch Alabama face off with Georgia or one of these other top 4 teams than I would to see Tennessee with Joe Milton at quarterback. We saw what happened when they played Georgia already, and they had Hendon Hooker at quarterback, and they seriously struggled. Other than that, though, again, I have no issues with this. I don't totally get Clemson not really falling that far. They're still in the top 10 despite a loss to South Carolina. Not a very big fan of that. I am happy that South Carolina is ranked, even though I bashed them at the beginning of the season. But for them to be placed where they are at 19 is very justifiable. But the last thing that I just want to say, and look, I'm not an LSU hater. I'm not. I've said this so many times. I've said it on the SEC kickoff show that I do with Blake Ruffino, who is an LSU host. He covers LSU football very closely. He's a close friend of mine, and I'm not an LSU hater. But I got to say, the fucking comments that I got over the past couple weeks, every time I complained about LSU being ranked too high, are justified after you lost to Texas A&M. I had been saying this. I don't want a 3-loss LSU team in. And now we don't even have to debate it anymore. They were frauds. They weren't as good as we thought that they were. And I'm sure that that's going to blow over well. Drop a comment below. Let me know where I'm wrong. Let me know where I'm right. If not, let me know what you think of the rankings. Do you think somebody should be higher? Do you think somebody should be lower? Comment it below. Let me know. Hit that like button. Subscribe. We'll be back with more.